You're with SAfm. Let's talk about sports clubs. We talk about sport a lot, but you need a club to be able to get started. You need somewhere to be based, to be able to work your way up through the ranks. We were listening to young Mpoma Shaw earlier as an umpire. Started playing football, netball for a club, and then I wonder Malinga earlier, a professional squash player, played for schools, and she's going to play for a club. She plays for Northerns. Let's talk about one of those clubs, and it's the Wanderers Club. And the Wanderers Club has been around, according to their website, since 1888. And we now talk to their current sports manager, Debbie Friend. Debbie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
What's it like being sports manager of a club that's been around for 100 million years?
I think as a sports person myself, it's probably the ideal career path that I could ever have chosen for myself. It's the most amazing environment. I get to play sports. I interact with sports people all day. We have 14 different sporting codes. So I get exposed to sports of various natures, just not ones that I specifically play or have interest in. But it's an amazing place to be.
The heritage and the first thing I think of when I think of the Wanderers is the stadium. It's the cricket team. It's the old you go to the Wanderers to watch a cricket match. There's so much more to that, isn't there?
Absolutely. So obviously the Wanderers Stadium is quite an iconic venue. But we as the sports club itself, we look after the 14 different sporting codes, including a cricket section. We've got hockey, we've got tennis, rugby, gymnastics, bowls, just to name a few of those. And a lot of those facilities that we have are very world-class facilities. We've recently actually replaced our hockey AstroTurf, and we have all sorts of games happening on our turf. So the lights we changed from the old metal halide lights through to LEDs. It's a cost-saving mechanism, as well as the quality of the lights that are actually put on there. It's exemplary. It's incredible to be able to play under lights of that nature. But yes, it's not just about cricket. If you look at a sport like bowls, we host a bowls event probably on a weekly basis here, where we do corporate team building for corporates or people that are having a bachelor's party, as an example. It's something that is actually quite social and quite festive. And it's often been thought of as a sport that is relatively for older people, where it's actually not. It's a sport that, for somebody who maybe doesn't like an intense sport like rugby or cricket or hockey, they have something that they can still be competitive in. They can still be outside in the sun, be social, and actually play something where there's a lot of strategy associated to what they're doing within the sport.
I suddenly saw a whole new tournament called Contact Bowls. You get to tackle somebody if they don't do well. I've just got this idea. I'm working on it. I'll let you know. Now, that's full contact bowls. All right. What I like about your website, on your website, you've got a list of all the sports that you do, and we'll go into more details on that. But it's a lot of young people that are involved. You always think of the Wanderers as being, what I do sometimes, as being like a stuffy old rich white person's club. It doesn't seem to be that when I look at the pictures you guys have got up.
Sure, that is definitely not the impression that you get when you're on our premises. And I suppose that because we've been around since 1888, that maybe when things were established in those days, that was what it was. But it's definitely not like that now. Probably about 70% of our membership is children. So we very much focus on the youth development side of things, and anybody from pretty much from about 3 to 5, depending on the sporting code that they would be involved in. And then it goes right all the way through primary school, high school, university, right up to our masters teams that compete. And we have a lot of national players that play in the national masters leagues and things like that as well. But definitely right from almost 3. It's very great to watch.
I was lucky enough once to be allowed into the snooker room. I didn't play. I wasn't allowed to go near the tables, but I was allowed into the snooker room. And that, when you imagine a snooker hall with it's dark and it's just got the lights over the table, it's just such a different atmosphere. It's like you're going back in time when you enter the Wanderers Club.
Absolutely, and I think snooker is quite a unique sport, just purely because of the ethos that actually comes out of that snooker environment. Once again, also got some really well recognized players here, and they play sometimes into the evenings. We had a snooker tournament quite recently, where we had the nationals at the club. And it's lovely to actually see that kind of quality of player and tournament coming through into the Wanderers Club. It's quite a quiet environment in comparison to the other sports. You're not supposed to make much noise in that area.
All right, you've got some new sports coming in at the club as well. Keeping up with the times?
Very much so. So one of the biggest sports, biggest growing sports in the world at the moment is something called paddle tennis. And we are hoping to finalize our paddle tennis infrastructure from sometime in the next 2 weeks. Once we have secured a vendor for that, we will be building paddle tennis, and within the next 3 or so months, we'll have paddle tennis courts. So.
I guess it's important to keep up with the times. You know, if I told you 50 years ago that the Wanderers would have a basketball team, you would have laughed at me, right?
Probably, yes. but paddle tennis is fantastic, and it's one of those kinds of sports. Paddle tennis is a combination between tennis and squash, and it has quite a big glass and metal cage around the court itself, and it's got an AstroTurf floor. The important thing about it is there's certain rules that are very similar to tennis, but there's also rules that allow you to keep the flow of the game moving, like you can actually bound it off the back wall as an example and still hit it in play. I think anybody who's got even the remotest competitive streak, as soon as they play paddle tennis, they will get addicted to the sport. It is really incredible, and it gets the blood flowing. It is not limited to very specific age groups or gender or anything like that. It can be something that is played by people with mental and physical disabilities. So your barrier to entry of playing in a sport like that is just phenomenal. And what that means to us as a club is that we're not just looking at completely an elite sports person type environment. We're looking for something which is a social sport and something that can be played by families, by people of all varying sporting capacities, and paddle tennis we find is something that is going to fit into that category. I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of bowls days that take place, and we think paddle tennis will be something very similar, where you can have a mini tournament or a team building event for a corporate that will be fun and social and people will enjoy. And I think that is such an intrinsic part of what sport is really about, is the actual enjoyment of it. Whether you're competing at a high level or whether you're just playing it for social on a single Saturday, it's always about the enjoyment.
Yeah, we forget, especially, well, I forget because, you know, I'm giving out scores of elites and it's win and lose. This team made the league. This team is now being relegated. You forget that the reason you play sport, A, is to be healthy, and B, is to socialize and be mates with people.
Absolutely. We have a huge social component to the sporting environment here. Yeah, so I mean, even on a Thursday, we have a time trial that happens from the club, and it's the only timed time trial in Johannesburg, where you can get a timing chip and you can track your own time trials. And the atmosphere after that time trial, people stay, they have a drink, they have a social chat with mates before they actually go home. It's a lovely environment to actually be involved in.
Oh, it's that joke. A sports club is just a drinking club with some sport to interrupt.
Well, they can get quite serious here on the sporting side. We have a lot of competing teams in most cities, and it's one of the renowned clubs when it comes to sports, and we are very proud of all our sports players.
Talk through, if you do, the development. How are you helping lesser communities or underprivileged people to be able to become a member or to be able to become sports stars?
So we do quite a lot of fundraising in our environment. A lot of the sporting codes actually have transportation that they arrange for for development players coming from various areas. We have on our rugby side, we have players that come through out of Alex. On our cricket side, we have ladies that come out of Ivory Park. And a lot of those kinds of players not only can't afford the membership fees, they can't necessarily afford even the transportation to actually get to a venue that is of a standard that they would be able to play in. And then there are things like the kit requirements. So not only the kit that they're playing in, but in a game like cricket, you would need gloves and a bat and balls, etc., etc. So we do rely quite heavily on sponsorship when it comes to that. We've got some really, really awesome sponsors that do get involved, and we are very, very fortunate that they do get involved, because we wouldn't be able to necessarily do that without them. Our ladies' cricket is phenomenal. They do a huge amount of work in the community as well. So.
Quickly, I didn't know this. I only found out about this now. Why it's called the Wanderers? Why is it called the Wanderers?
Because people wandered into Johannesburg
Yeah.
around the time of mining towns and stuff like that. So it was very much more rugby cricket orientated in the early years. But now we are, partly from the sporting code and the number of codes that we actually offer, we are probably the biggest sporting club, I would guess, in the country, just with regards to the number of codes that we actually offer.
I didn't know. It's the first time. I mean, I've been to the Wanderers since I was a child. I didn't know that young men wandered from other mining towns like Kimberley, attracted the mining. There we go. Learn something new. Tell us about I see on the website, the Wanderers Bowls Club are hosting an open day next Sunday. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So to encourage people to get bitten by the sport of bowls, we have an open day once a month, which is the last Sunday of every month. And we then encourage people to come down. We provide the bowls as long as they have flat shoes or barefoot. They can come in and pick up a couple of bowls and just throw them on the greens. And then we'll...
You don't throw a bowl.
Roll a bowl. You'd be surprised. Some people do tend to throw them a little bit, unfortunately.
I've just added a new rule to my full contact bowls sport.
Throwing it. But yes, we do encourage people to come down. I, as a hockey player myself, I love the sport of bowls. I think it is such a underranked sport, and it's very strategic, and it's a lot of fun. Doesn't often take an entire day like some other sports do, the bigger sports that you would play, but it's very low impact. It is strategic. Anybody can play as well. Any families can actually play. So once again, our focus often is on the family component and the enjoyment of sports. So yes, and we've got a phenomenal restaurant here where people can enjoy a meal afterwards and things like that. So it's a great environment to be.
You got a picture of a man bowling here in jeans and a t-shirt. It's not like you need the stuffy white pants and the big hat.
No, and those big hats and years gone by, and the ladies with their very long skirts and things like that. and interestingly enough, I mean, if you look at the Australian Commonwealth team, who've sent their bowls to the Commonwealth, the ladies, I think there's 5 ladies in that team, and the average age of those ladies is 27. So it's definitely not a sport where it's for somebody who is retired. It is for those people because it is a lower impact sport, and it's easier for older people to play, but it is definitely not limited to that age category. I love it, and I'm not even close to that category.
I can imagine all the old people going it used to be our sport until the young'uns arrived.
Yes, indeed. And I think even for kids, we're trying to get some of the schools in our area to have a sort of school deal to kind of bring their kids here. If you think about it as a child, you grew up with marbles and you would play marbles on a field, and bowls is just bigger marbles, and being able to place one of those balls closer to the jacks.
I was looking at that Australian team you're talking about. Dylan Fisher's 20 years old in the men's team. The oldest player is 39, Brett Wilkie from Queensland. Okay. And you're right, the women, 33, I think, is the oldest woman, and the rest are all early 30s, late 20s.
Absolutely. So there's no reason why it has to be for old people only.
Okay, so if you're interested in sports, the Wanderers is the golf course part of what you do as well?
No, it's not. They
Okay.
were a number of years ago, but they are now a separate entity to
Okay. So bowls, go and find out what it's like, and I'm sure while you're there you can explore the clubhouse a little bit and get to know what else is happening.
Absolutely. We'd love to have people here.
All right, I think I might do bowls, but I don't know if my back can handle it. So I'll just sit there and make up rules for my full contact bowls. There must be a drinking law in there as well, I think. A little beer every now and again. Debbie, good chatting to you. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Debbie Friend, sports manager at the Wanderers Club. As you heard, it sounds fascinating. What's that joke about? You don't want to become a member of a club that will accept you as a member. But yeah, bowls. It could be your sport. Who knows? If you're in Jersey, why not take advantage? The Wanderers Bowls Club having an open day on Sunday. That's next Sunday, bright and early in the morning. You can find out more at thewanderersclub.co.za. Played bowls once.